Hey, Module 3, Speaking Anxiety. Let's talk about nerves, glossophobia, stage fright, communication apprehension. Whatever you call it, you're not alone. 75 to 85% of people experience speaking anxiety. They're more afraid, those 75 to 85%, top of the list, more afraid of public speaking than death and spiders. So you're not alone. It's a common thing. The good news is you don't need to eliminate the fear. You just need to learn how to work with it. So, what's the difference between a roller coaster falling off a cliff? That fear of falling, that excitement, the adrenaline, uh, everything about your body that either tenses up and the excitement, maybe the hypersensitivity, they're identical. It's the same thing. But what's the difference? Well, one, you're gonna fall to your death. The other one is, just a ride that, you probably paid $150 to get into the park. But anyway, so what it is it's like, well, public speaking, it's that fear, it's that anxiety we have. All we have to do is repackage it and say, all right, we're falling off the cliff, but I'm really in a safe environment. So we repackage it and we don't get rid of it. Don't ever worry about getting it. We just want to repackage it. Some of the top speakers and actors and podcasters, some of them are of an absolute fear of public speaking, but they just manage through the fear. They rechannel it so they can use it to energize themselves and to really be passionate, engage with the audience. So next, we're going to go through a bunch of slides on different sources of fear. Because once we know them, we identify them, we can then better repackage it and make it work for us. New things are exciting. If you're given a speech and you say something new or have some prop that's a new thing from it, it's exciting. However, as you're the one giving the speech, the novelty, if you're not experienced with it, that novelty is nerve wracking. It increases your anxiety, energy too, but your anxiety. So, new situations create speaking anxiety. Well, what do you do? Well, familiarity helps reduce the novelty, right? So, it's like reps. So, let's consider some things that you've been through that were sort of anxiety riddled. Your first day at a new job. So, whatever job you have right now, think back to the first day. It was sort of stressful, it was unknown. It was just new. You didn't know how anybody was going to react, right? But now you don't even think about it, right? That day is gone. That's past. That energy, that anxiety, that nervousness, it's all gone. You just moved on. All right. Joining a gym. All right. For some people, I can relate. You go to a gym the first time, you have this like thing where everybody knows you're new. It's your first day, right? They all know. Nobody knows. Nobody cares. But once you do it for a bit, it's just done. You just walk in like you own the place. You don't even think about it. Using a new app. Think about it. Sometimes a new app and you're like, I don't even want to use it. People are talking about it. You're like, app burnout. I don't want another one. And then you get it and you're looking at it. You don't know where the menu items are. And then at some point, no acknowledgement of this transition. It's just gone. It's just all of a sudden you use the app and you don't think about it anymore, right? The last example is your first Zoom or any video meeting. Like the first one, if you can think back, or your first couple, it's a bit nerve wracking. It's like I don't know how to act. What do I dress like? How do I stand? But now that because of COVID, we've done it so much. It's just a thing. We don't think about it. That novelty is worn off. So let's just compare it real quick. So the fact of what the thing is, your first day in a new job, joining a gym, using a new app, video meeting. Well, the factual things of that haven't changed. It's just the thing that is now familiar. I've done it. No more anxiety with it. So every speech is different, right? New room, new audience, new pressure, and that's normal. But the more we do it, the more reps that we do, it just becomes more familiar and it's easier. But anyway, let's talk about a couple specific things that you can actively do to reduce that anxiety before you have 10 reps under your belt. So one of them is visit the space. Sounds a bit awkward, right? Not all of us are going to have a public speaking career with a big TEDx behind us, and we have 400 people in an audience. But whatever your venue may be, visit the space if that's something that you can do. If it's going to be at a meeting that you're normally in, maybe it doesn't, you're normally in that room, maybe it doesn't apply. However, I recall that at one company I was at, we had one giant conference room, and that's what we did, all the time. And I was always the one, or usually the one, running meetings. For whatever reason, we started using a different one that was being used for offices and stuff, and we restructured. And when we went there, it was nothing huge, but I felt like my game was off. I knew where I stood. I knew where people were. I probably subconsciously knew how loud to speak, how much how to project my voice. But now I'm in this new spot, and I should have went in there for 5 minutes and just gotten used to it. Didn't think about it at the time, but it's really powerful, and it threw me off. So another thing that we could talk about is meet a few of the audience members. Again, doesn't have to be a TED Talk, podium, big audience. So if you're at a meeting and there's a dozen people, six people, whatever it may be, and you know you're going to speak, and before the meeting, if you make an effort to say hi and exchange a few words with a few people, a number of things happen, right? There's an obligation on their part to pay more attention to you, to lean in, because you just spoke to them, right? And so that's a principle of persuasion that we refer to as commitment and consistency. Once you get somebody to commit to something, they commit to engage with you. So you go and you're like, hey, how you doing? How was your weekend? Kind of thing. As humans, we have an urge to stay consistent with that commitment that we made. So you do that with a few people in a room, and a number of things happen. Is they're paying more attention to you. You feel it. It's very comforting, right? When people are on the phone or looking away or eye rolls, man, it snowballs in a bad way. However, snowballs in a good way when they're paying attention to you. So meet a few audience members and create that commitment and consistency. No, I'm just kidding. The other thing you want to do is test your tech. Make sure your technology works. It is one of the biggest points of stress for people, and it's one of the biggest things that kill speeches. When I have students do their first speech that has a presentation in my public speaking classes, I don't say anything about the presentation, right? The actual file that they have. And so I have the first student, the second student, the third, by fifth or sixth, they're figuring it out. They're coming up and they're like, what do I do? I was like, well, give your speech. They're like, well, I have my presentation. I was like, well, put it on. And they're like, well, where? How do I do it? Right? Because they never even gave it any thought on, well, where are they doing it? Are they emailing me a file? Are they just logging into the computer in the front of the room that connects to the screen? Are they plugging their laptop in, which is what just about everybody, which I recommend what everybody does. However, they didn't do it. Nowadays, everybody has a laptop or a phone, like literally every student. And so most stuff is they save it on the cloud. So they could all do it, right? But it takes a few minutes. The first 5 speeches is kind of a cluster because nobody tests their technology. They just go up and, they do it. A few others asked me for my clicker, which advances slides. And so I'll give it to them, and I don't explain it to them. I'll give it to them. And it's so cringy. They'll speak for 30 seconds and they'll want to change the slide and they don't know how to do it. Maybe they didn't turn it on. Maybe they didn't take the USB stick and plug it in. And then partway through this, they have to ask me. And then I tell them what to do it. But I do it on purpose because when you experience something, you experience the dread of that happening, you really learn it. So here, try not to experience the dread, right? Test your technology. If you have a Zoom meeting, Google Meet, whatever it may be, Microsoft Teams, and you're meeting with people, let's say you have an interview or you're just having a meeting with your regular team, 30 seconds, 45 seconds, you go on, and every single one has the ability for you to test your microphone and your speaker. That's it. It's easy. And your camera, of course. So another thing is if you are going to a place, right, even just a meeting room, a conference room, and you're going to present something, is there a computer there? Is there a way to plug your laptop in, right? One of the most common things I watch people struggle, is a lot of the uh, Apple products, laptops, they don't have an HDMI. So if you don't have a HDMI to USB-C converter, they don't have any way to connect. I always have a converter with me I can use, but I let them fail for 30 seconds before I bail them out with it. So test your tech. It's a way to just remove any other point of stress that you might have. The other thing is practice your opening, right? So it's new to you. You haven't spoken before on this topic, at least. Practice it. Drive in your car, do whatever. Practice it 5, 6, 7, 10, 20 times. Because what happens the more you say it, a couple times you'll be like, ooh, awkward delivery, right? I need to polish it. So practice your delivery. You'll get it down. You'll highlight things that don't work. Little side tip is oftentimes we'll write, our speech out. We'll write what we're going to say, and we'll pick words that we think fulfill the emotion and the content we want to get across. However, as somebody, born and raised in Long Island, I have certain words I just stumble on. And so what I do is I get rid of them. If I start practicing speaking just out loud to myself a couple times and I'm like, but I just get rid of those words and I replace another word, right? I don't spend my time trying to master and stick to that word. I just find another one because I don't need that extra pressure of the moment, of stumbling over a word, because it does. Every little thing will throw you off a little bit. And what we want to do is eliminate the things that throw us off, and then we want to learn how to recover and do it. So these are simple steps. What you want to do is be more familiar, because then you gain control, and that's a powerful thing. Having control when it comes to public speaking. Heart pounding, sweaty hands, that's adrenaline, not failure. So let's talk about physical symptoms. Why is my body freaking out? So adopt a pre-speech ritual. Deep breathing, shoulder rolls, pacing or stretching. I'm not going to do either one right here. And then another thing is the Wonder Woman pose or the Superman pose, which is you stand up, put your hands on your hips, span that chest. All right. So you're saying, yeah, I got it. Those don't help. They help. So before I tell you that there's scientific proof they help, and we'll talk about it, just consider, like, I have nothing to lose by shaking everything out, by deep breathing, by rolling my shoulders, or by stretching. There's nothing to lose. So one, it's easy, nothing to lose. The second thing is it works. So social psychologist Amy Cuddy, she has research that proves this. And so what she had done is that she had all these participants, and what they had to do was do a bunch of tasks. And so half the participants, she had do the Wonder Woman or Superman power pose, right? So she had half of them do that. The other half didn't. And then after that, they each did their task. However, they went in and they took saliva samples of all the participants right before they did it. Then they took a saliva sample after they did the pose, or not, or after they did the tasks. And so what Amy found out was that the high testosterone levels, which is associated with confidence and dominance, that appeared after the power pose. And then a lower cortisol level, which is associated with stress, decreased after the power pose, including some of these other stretches and shaking it out. So we know that those two things, the cortisol and the testosterone, we know they have an effect on us. So here you have something that no loss, no waste of time, that you can do and immediately set you right. Please don't discount it. It's really it's really a powerful, simple, easy win. We go through our lives and we're like, man, I wish there was just some easy thing I could do to overcome some hurdle. This is it. This is an easy thing that you can do. Try the power pose. Go ahead, close the door, look in the mirror, do the power pose. You're going to feel like, whoa, I do feel it. So it's a powerful, simple thing that you can combat those physical symptoms that often make us super nervous. Your speech has to be perfect every time. No, no, that's unrealistic. It's not going to be. Never going to be. For a million reasons. The lighting's going to be a little off. You're not going to feel yourself, or you're going to overemphasize one point and be excited about it and forget another point. Just unrealistic beliefs. Doesn't have to be perfect. Most speakers think they need to be flawless. And then, of course, stress comes from that because the anxiety of constantly thinking, how am I going to be perfect? But that belief, that's the problem. Throw it away. So one small stubble and the internal spiral begins. That's what happens. However, when you're thinking that I blew it, you don't have to worry about perfection. Just worry about a clear connection. Worry about your message, right? So here's a couple things to help, and then we'll get into a story that will clarify this. Accept nerves as part of the process. That's it. Checkbox. I'm never going to get away from them. It's a thing. Anxiety, energy. It's good. Let's move forward with that. Have some self-talk, right? Pump yourself up. It works. Just like the last slide with the power pose. It works. Pump yourself up. Practice by explaining ideas to others. This is sort of a struggle. We have an idea, even if it's a simple idea. Sometimes we struggle like, did I get that across right? Just go ahead. Ask somebody else. Explain it to somebody else. And what they'll do is they'll highlight something that was confusing or wordy or whatever it may be. So another thing that I wanted to share is so in a class where a student who spoke quite a bit, I mean throughout like the lectures of the class, uh, nice person, right? Spoke quite a bit. First speech, right? Pick names randomly, and he had to go first or second or third, something like that, right in the beginning. So the first speech, and he just was nervous. He was so nervous. He was shaking, and he couldn't do it, right? And his topic was on some geographical, something about something about geography, something about rocks, right? So his thing was about some rocks, and he's talked about this, and clearly he's passionate and interested. And that case was like you have to pick a random topic that is unimportant to the world, right? So he picked something that he was passionate and whatever. Couldn't do it. He just stopped. The rest of the class was super uh, empathetic, and they're like, "Come on, man, come on, you could do it." And they're helping him, and he just couldn't do it. And so I was like, all right, you know what? Let's come back to it. And then I said, I am interested though. So what, like, how did you get involved with rocks? What made that interesting? And so then he started telling me about how he discovered he was interested in rocks. And I was like, so what are the things that you were going to share with us? And he's like, oh, I thought I'd share. And he's telling me the thing. He just gave me a speech, right? So when he was done, I gave him credit for speech. I said, you just spoke to us. You executed your speech, and you were interesting and you were engaging, clearly passionate about it. What was the difference? It was a conversation. It was the way that he framed it in his head. I'm giving a speech. I must be perfect. I'm going to like hyper focus on every word and phrase and hand gesture and eye roll and eye contact. And he's hyper focusing on all that. And then he had a conversation with me. Same content, same room, same group of people, the same ears listening. There was no difference. He was there speaking and he was up in front, just like if he was giving the speech, right? It's kind of funny how humans are. The same thing, we just repackaged that energy and that nervousness. And it turned out that it was interesting and engaging. And then he was able to move forward with that point because he realized he just gave the speech. All eyes may be on you, but the judgment is not what you think. That's what we call the spotlight effect. We all think the audience is scrutinizing our every word, our every stumble, and our awkward gestures, gestures, just like that. However, that's the spotlight effect, the belief that others are paying way more attention to us than they actually are. Here's the truth. Most people, they're just not, right? We're all kind of judgmental. We have 1,000 micro judgments we do. But the thing is, they're thinking about themselves. They're thinking about their time. They're thinking about what they're going to do later, and they're also thinking about the content, the words, the conversation that you're about to have with them. your stumble, your, mispronunciation, that was really good. I didn't plan that. Is just gone. It's just something they'll move past, but we hyper focus on it. So what you need to do is realize, okay, the spotlight effect exists where I think that the things that I do wrong are going to be ultra noticed. That's not the thing. Just shift the focus outward. Know your content, right? Practice your opening until it flows. We'll talk about introductions later, but practice your opening. Everything practice, but your opening, you get that polished because that's the thing that kicks it all off and sets the tone. And then rehearse on the video until you get to the point where you're like, yeah, we've done this. We've got this. All right. So they're not judging your every move. They're just waiting for your point. Is an obstacle for public speaking that causes us to have fear of public speaking is we manufacture these rules that we think we have to stay within because public speaking must be this and this and this, and that's what we have to do. No, rigid rules create rigid speakers. So just throw that out. So a lot of speakers, they'll lock themselves up inside of a box because of things like notes. We'll talk about each one of those, saying, looking at the screen and then moving away from the podium. Let's just go to notes. You do not at all want to read from a script. It's robotic and it's boring. People are disengaged. You can't connect with the audience because you're not looking at them. You're looking at your notes. However, notes, powerful thing. You can use them a number of ways. You can actually use them as a crutch. So you have some note cards and you're speaking and you're like, yeah, I'd like to tell you 3 points on why I think this is a good approach that we should take. First point is blah, blah, blah. And you speak. The next thing I'd like to talk to you about, it's fine. It's kind of like a crutch. You can use it and point. Does anybody remember? Man, all my references are getting so old. Bill Clinton, when he spoke, he did that little weird thumb thing and he pointed at you. I think today we can make a new tomorrow. That was not one of his speeches, but he would do that, and so it was a physical gesture that makes speaking engagement increase, and it's interesting, but it's also a rule breaker, right? So that's something that people like, I can't believe I was doing that. No, throw that away. The other thing is saying or whatever vocal filler. Like instructors, professors will teach public speaking and will critique and we will like say, you need to like reduce your filler words because it's important. However, it doesn't make it terrible at all. And a lot of times they're just more natural and you come across as another person having a conversation and it's, makes it interesting, makes it engaging. It's like, oh, it's another person. It's a human. When somebody comes off and they're uber polished, there's a couple things that happen. They may be very good, maybe some motivational speaker, and you're going to go out and run 10 miles a day when they're done. However, often comes across as too well rehearsed, too practiced. And when something that we absorb that is highly manufactured, we don't really give it the authentic level that we really should. We kind of like, that came across as inauthentic. It was too polished. It was too perfect, right? So you're human and you know who you're speaking to? You're speaking to other humans. So that's fine. Looking at the screen, two sides to that coin. One is like this, camera here, screen here, bunch of notes, look, go back and forth, whatever. Another thing is if you have a presentation, like on my cyberpunk futuristic city here, and you have a presentation going on, what you can do is look at it, point at it. Don't stare and read at it from the back of your head for 20 minutes, but point at it, look at it, say, this is an interesting point I want to share right there, right? Use it, put it in there. Don't have this rule that you can't do that, right? Throw that out. Another thing is the podium. Some people use it as a crutch, which is kind of a nice baby step that you can get into public speaking if there's a podium or a desk or some physical thing that keeps you safe from the evil audience. But walk away from it. You don't have to stay behind it. There's a thing called proximity that is super powerful in all communication studies, right? When you're speaking to a room, just say 20 people, they're in chairs lined up, you're speaking, and you say you have 7 or 8 minutes you think you're going to go through. If 2 or 3 minutes in, you realize I need to re-engage them, right? Maybe your energy level's not there. Maybe the topic is a little bit off to them, or maybe the points that you think are really going to pull them in, you didn't get to yet. Walk. The moment that you get closer to people, that proximity, they perk up, right? So move away from the podium. I remember this one intro to communication course. It was an entry level course, right? And it was 400. It was a room of 450 filled up, and so there was three different um, instructors that would, you know, that would be in the room at any given time. One of them up on the stage, actually down because this one went up. They're, on the stage speaking. The other two sort of walking around, like parents, monitoring. Anyway, 450 freshman students. So what do you think 449 of these 450 students are doing? They got laptops, their phone, they're on Amazon, they're on TikTok. Some of them are playing Call of Duty, right? I've seen it all. Because it's 450, they're lost in the crowd. They don't really pay attention for a whole bunch of reasons that are outside the control of the person teaching the course. However, when we talk about proximity and the power of that, we'll walk up in the middle of the auditorium, this wide, extra wide, wider than my hands, of steps that you can walk up. And so when we're talking about that, and I'll walk up the steps, everybody who is within that realm of, 10 seats in, they all stand up, sit up, pay attention. Right? It's very, very powerful. It gets people re-engaged immediately. So you walk away from that podium. The moment that you do, we talked about novelty earlier. The moment that you do, it's novel to the audience, and they're paying attention and they're looking up. So that's a powerful technique that you can do that is getting away from any rigid rules. So adapt to the moment and the audience, and own your own style. Don't get hyper focused on any rules. Own what you want to do. There's some unique things within you that you can figure out that you're going to make an interesting speech. So remember, you're not being graded by your obedience. You're being remembered for your presence. So wrapping up, speaking anxiety is, remember, you're not alone. Remember, about 85% of the population has a fear of public speaking. You're not alone. So let's just compare it to Monica Lewinsky. So she was thrust into not even the national spotlight, the international spotlight. There was news stories 24 hours a day, every station, newspaper articles, interviews, endless about the Monica Lewinsky and Bill Clinton affair. So she was just at a college at the time, so she was young. So after this blew up and became a thing, she actually moved out of the country for quite a while. She stayed out of the spotlight, and she was afraid. There was so much anxiety about, like, her life was thrown up in the air. There was so many things going on. It was something that hopefully none of us will ever have to come close to experiencing. But then she came back and she did a TED Talk. And when she spoke, it was the first time she had a public speaking engagement like this. The first time she spoke, she was visibly nervous, but she spoke well. She had her content dialed in. She was engaging. She delivered to the audience. But the whole time, you can tell everything about what's happened to her the first time she's now publicly speaking about that and about other issues that she cares about. That baggage is there and she's visibly nervous, but she takes that energy and she turns it into something that makes a good speech. So what was the end result? Well, you got respect. She has respect, engagement, and transformation. And I've seen speeches with her afterwards. So she is now a polished speaker. She is authentic, she's engaging, and she's interesting. You don't think that when people see and hear her name, at least those of you like me old enough to have lived through it, they're not thinking of the incident with the affair with Bill Clinton? No, they know that. They think that she knows that, but she now has repackaged that energy into being able to deliver a good, polished speech. So it's not about being fearless, it's about being heard. You want your message to be heard. We all have something we have to say, whether it's at a meeting and you're a proponent for a new piece of software versus what some other people are thinking, or whether it's some ideology, whatever it is, we all want to be heard. We want to get our message across and listened to.